Nelson Reimagined drew on In-Situ's depth of work in integrating community interests and networks with contributions from artists across multiple disciplines.
The idea with Nelson Reimagined is that it's thinking about what the future of a place like Nelson could be, what this investment might mean, and really what art and culture can do to kind of create a sustainable sort of legacy for this bit of funding, but also thinking what the different pathways for post-industrial towns might be.
We explored themes such as play, community resilience, listening and imagining, and made use of practices such as game design, asset mapping, community assemblies, interdisciplinary talks, music and poetry, walking and eating together.
It is the furthest we have reached. We are breaching into the future. We are exiles emerging from our long past, but here in our present, ever present, we move ever forward.
Reimagining Nelson aimed to create the conditions necessary for collectively envisioning new realities and futures. In common with post-industrial towns and cities across the world, the present reality of Nelson is most often told in negative terms. A declining urban environment with low economic activity, aspiration and opportunity. This generic picture elides the specificities of place and people. We countered it by foregrounding, facilitating and growing alternative models of collective organising, resilience, creativity, work, economic activity and exchange.
As I've got involved with all the community groups and sort of seeing all the people that are working towards clearing that that prejudice and that misjudgment to really turn it into something that, you know, people talk about Nelson as being. You know, you get the old generation, they talk about Nelson in the 60s and 70s and 80s and it was bustling. We're really trying to bring it back to that.
Through artist-led research, Nelson Reimagined examined these models, making them accessible as strategies to be deployed by communities searching for a more hopeful narrative of place through time, of a future for Nelson.
What first kind of drew me to apply was the way the call out was actually written, I think, and I think I really aligned with its values, which were really about long-term thinking.
The town has such a complex and wonderful, you know, difference in cultures, and they've got, you know, everybody's got their own economies. How do you start to bring that together to make a sort of plan for the town?
I'm increasingly interested in kind of like reactivating disused spaces and working within them, be it kind of derelict spaces in localities or kind of disused buildings for like galleries. So it felt like an interesting fit.
With an emphasis on research and co-production, our artist commissions brought innovative practices to bear on central questions such as: how can we take ownership of our town and its surroundings and see it differently? How can we build on what's already here, our common resources, our knowledge, our expertise? Looking outwards, what can we learn from other communities? Thinking globally to act locally. Building on a heritage of radicalism, can we reclaim our agency and imagine other futures?
And so far that's kind of taken the form of a series of artist research commissions. So we're inviting artists to come and help us find out about all the interesting and good stuff that's going off in Nelson already.
Dana Olărescu investigated the central role that food plays in the life and well-being of Nelson's communities, learning about the important work of local food initiatives and the systemic challenges they face. An experimental food festival was an opportunity not only to share food and recipes, but also to talk about the value of food.
What I've noticed in Nelson over the last 4 months is actually just how strong the will of the people is to actually have sustainable food systems. It's the thinking process, it's the problem solving, and it's identifying what works and doesn't work, and also what are the gaps that we can cover together, what are the commonalities, and what are the points that they can communally fight towards, if that makes sense.
Kristina Borg brought an outsider's eye to bear, creating maps of the green and blue spaces in and around Nelson's townscape and the means connecting between them and the built environment. A zine was produced, and Kristina invited people to join foraging walks to gather plants for food and for craft.
The main takeaway, I would say, is the realization and the sense of awareness of how much nature offers, which is just available outside our doorstep, and perhaps we don't realize and we don't make enough use of it. What kind of potential do these green and blue spaces offer for us as diverse humans, but also what kind of relationship can we have between humans and the more than human?
Rob St. John added a further dimension to the cartography of Nelson by inviting local people to contribute to a sound map of the townscape with recordings of sounds that unite the urban and green spaces.
That echo, that kind of echo of presence and absence, of what the town's been in terms of its bustling past, and all these kind of plans for regeneration and reanimation have kind of very much played out in all these conversations about listening.
Maps and map making are endlessly useful in helping us tell stories about the places we know, or we think we know. Michael Powell co-created an illustrated map of Nelson through a series of workshops with several community groups. This map then facilitated discussions about underused areas of the town centre. Michael led a walk exploring these zones and sharing ideas for their reactivation.
Been hearing a lot of memories, a lot of kind of stories of kind of people's childhoods and the use of the indoor market. There's a real want for things that happen by chance or for free in spaces where you wouldn't expect.
Sam Jones also made use of maps to lead discussion of community assets with provocations to reimagine how communities can regain agency and take back ownership of the urban environment. Sam shared examples of alternative forms of community asset ownership, presenting an opportunity for residents to imagine an alternative, sustainable economic model.
Assets could be a piece of land, they could be a building, could be a green space. I mean, I think people are coming up with quite different things. Some people are seeing it as sort of businesses and buildings, but then it could also be the people themselves.
Andy Abbott used video game design to explore the future of work in Pendle against a background of the dominating narrative of terminal economic downturn. He worked with students at Nelson and Colne College and young people at the Yes Hub, and together created an immersive VR game experience presenting an alternative vision of work and employment in Pendle.
Somewhere like Pendle might offer a very different type of work that isn't centralised to a factory or a particular place. People could live in Pendle and work anywhere. It's going to be something that people can continue to play to have these kind of slightly more complicated conversations about the future of work in Pendle.
Interdisciplinary talks, both in person and online, allowed us to develop these questions, exploring commonalities and introducing ideas and voices from communities with comparable stories and concern, which are, in any case, inextricable from global issues.
So I would like to talk about Comp & Drinks, which is a social enterprise, arts project, but also a place for commoning. When we started 9 years ago, the invitation locally was that we think about collective and communal making, and we kind of reconnected to history that to everyone who's working class East London would be familiar with, which is the history of going hop picking in Kent.
This is a sort of map of some of the projects that I've been doing. And I realized a couple of years ago that actually it's all just one big project. It's about working locally. I'm just realizing that and going, oh yeah. And I think everybody else had realized it, but I was the last one to the table. But realizing that this local work is basically what I'm trying to do. And I'm just trying to map some of these different projects and different manifestations. What's really interesting about the post-industrial landscapes is that they're in a constant state of excavation or regeneration or rewilding. There's always some kind of live process. All landscapes are live, but somehow the post-industrial ones for me are the most interesting ones. It's the ones that are connected to international narratives, from capitalism to empire to globalism to extraction. All these kinds of narratives come from this post-industrial landscape.
Right, so we go back now to the building on Vernon Street. Let's start there. The Independent Labour Party was formed in Nelson before it was formed nationally. They were so far ahead of the rest of the country. But that's where they did a lot of their meetings. They had plays, they had music, they had art, they had culture. People that don't think that working class people could do this sort of thing, but they did.
They were going to knock the market down and do a classic development which you'd find in London, which would be build luxury houses and then build a market at the bottom, which would not have small stall holders from all around the world in it, but would have chain stores in it and stuff like that. The market traders, they got organised and they started this process of developing what they call a community plan, democratically developing a community plan for what they wanted to see on that site. The developers, Granger, finally said, okay, this is not going to work. There's too much opposition. Then you're in a situation of, well, actually, this community plan might well work. You know? And we got invited in to sort of turn it to see if we could develop a public common partnership model around this site, basically.
There's so many different people coming at it from different angles. So I think this is the beauty of play, that, like you said, you bring lots of different types of people together in one room to be able to think things through differently. And as long as there's that willingness to engage with an open mind, I don't think any subject matter is off the table.
Nelson Reimagined comprises multiple themes, practices, and perspectives. If asked to choose one theme as representative, a good candidate might be play, suggesting freedom from constraint and the opportunity to try out new possibilities. Hua Young co-created playable games as a means to open up discussion about the issues relevant in the lives of local residents, but also, perhaps, for the sake of developing play as an intrinsic good or as a means of resisting power.
I've been trying to build on the research from the previous year, and the call out was to imagine a community toy chest. And I thought, instead of making toys or a chest for people to borrow, what if I could make players? So you don't have to rely on a chest, because the skills are in the people. So I wanted to start up a first respond play unit for Nelson, which is like the volunteer fire service, but for play. So if there's a play emergency, this is who you would call. And I'm still in the recruitment process. So I feel like I want to get across the idea that playing is an essential skill, that it unlocks imagination, because when you're playing, you're temporarily in this magic circle that allows you to think about alternatives.
Whoa. Red Plenty Games created a game that helps players to think collectively about community resilience and power by giving them decision-making control over how community assets are supported and resourced as challenges and crises come their way.
Final crisis. Can your community infrastructure get Nelson through an omni-crisis? You will need at least 4 projects. At least 1 resource link.
Playing the game inevitably leads to talk that would not otherwise happen.
You can pay the running cost for both with, say, 1/5.
Fantastic.
Was definitely providing a platform to talk about some of the challenges that these groups that ended up featured in the game by their decision had. You know, one of the things we did at the start is we talk about what is to be included. You know, what are the important groups in Nelson, and that gave them certainly a push to talk about who's having the most impact. Then they were speaking quite a lot about, oh, well, you know, this group's actually having a lot of problems. This one's, you know, kind of like a little unstable.
So you've got all of the kind of discussions around content and like the things that are actually in Nelson and the things that Nelson needs, and the things that it can maybe let go or whatever, which that's the main part of it really. But there's also, I think we hoped, a bit of just kind of getting you into a headspace where you're thinking around things like, aside from the specific projects you're looking at, you're also thinking, well, how do I maximise the social impact of a project that's cheaper to run and things like,
On a wider scale, it's getting into the heads of people who make the decisions locally. That's the problem, I think. This idea of involving people and it being public is a fantastic idea. It's getting into the heads of the people who make the decisions in the first place.
People get bored of the ideas. You want something new to sort of rejuvenate people's creativity for coming up with, okay, we want this in the town, we want this space for these people. You need that creative inspiration, otherwise nothing gets done.
It's been a busy 3 years, deepening our understanding of local concerns and aspirations, reinforcing community infrastructure, and researching tools for building a bright, just and sustainable future for Nelson. We engaged artists who came with provocations that helped us collectively reframe issues that can seem intractable. Collectively, we began to reimagine a story about the past, the present, and the future of Nelson. Transformation and reinvention are embedded in Nelson's history. Before us lies opportunity to make a lasting change and forge a new path. What does this path build on? Who will walk it? Where might it lead? How will it be maintained? How will we take care of this new Nelson to ensure its bright future is a sustainable one?